It's going to be an interactive workshop, hopefully give you guys some ideas to learn maybe some things from me, hopefully lots of things from each other, and to leave the room armed with a few more ideas. I'm going to throw in a few of my own real-life case studies and give you a couple of my top tips for how to break the mold. There's going to be a task section where you guys are going to design an event in groups and then share back with the group what you've come up with. My name is Phoebe. I'm an independent events and communications consultant. I used to be managing director for a live events agency, producing large-scale creative events for various different corporate companies. And these days, as a consultant, I advise different companies on how to engage and connect with their audience through the medium of live events, predominantly through kind of short-term strategic projects. There are loads of different reasons why we all do events, but we're probably all united in the fact that we want our audience to enjoy our events, we want our audience to remember our events, and we want them to inspire some sort of action. So it might be that event to inspire the action, or it might be a part of a wider campaign, whether that be a purchase, a donation, changing their behaviour back in the office. And, you know, that's quite a big task for an event to lead to that action. So we obviously need our events to stand out from the crowd. For me, there are some important first steps in doing that. First of all, it's really important to be really clear on your aims and objectives of an event. With my background in agency, I'm really used to having to get under the skin of a business really quickly to learn about their aims and objectives. And my first step is to always work hard to define those. It's amazing sometimes how people organising the events don't always have clarity on those, whether it be communication issues with your internal stakeholders or whatever it might be. But clarifying why this event is taking place in the first place can actually inspire a lot of your thought process. And as well as just the aims and objectives of that particular event, for me, I think the wider business context is also really important. And at the same time, getting to know your audience, it might sound a really obvious one, but this is so important, whether it be events that you're producing for clients, employees, stakeholders, getting to know their likes, their dislikes, their preferences, perhaps what events they've been to before, and all of those things, and perhaps their specific pain points, specific issues they have, can really help design your event and hopefully come up with something that's a bit different in relation to that audience. And then, of course, it's time to get creative, pushing the mold with your ideas, but it has to be done always in context of those first 2 points. You know, there's loads of different creative ideas that we can do with our events, but they have to be channeled in line with the initial aims and objectives, and of course be specific to the people that you're actually delivering the event for. To take reference from the world around you is a great way to be inspired for some creativity for the events that you put on. So this could be references from popular music, art, TV, events that are happening around the world, festivals, so on and so forth. So I thought I would share a couple of real-life case studies where some great inspiration has been taken from the world. So this first one here is I was tasked with coming up with a format-breaking event. It was a company conference for their employees. They wanted to move away from the typical SlideShare company update that they were used to. I'm sure many of you have found yourself in that position where it's just sharing slides, facts and figures, and you want to kind of move away from that. And that was exactly our brief on this particular event here. As I said, first steps were to gather the objectives, to learn about the audience. This particular workforce was a heavy millennial population, so we knew we could have a bit of fun, which as you can see, we did. So the full day's content for this event was delivered through the mechanism of a TV channel. So the pictures you can see here were from the plenary session. So we tailored their various topics to sections of the news. The financial updates were read from the news desk in the format of the news headlines. The upcoming strategy was delivered in the format of a sports report, and we even dressed two of the colleagues in some sports gear. The people challenges the company were facing were delivered through a weather report with some interactive content. And market changes were presented through a video as an international report from overseas. not shown in pictures, but after this we then had breakouts which were delivered in the form of various different TV shows that were on the channel. So we had a Dragon's Den style one, we had a Live from Glastonbury, and various others, and then we kind of brought all the employees back together at the end of the day and had some question time with the leadership team on stage. So for this event we took inspiration from something as everyday as the TV that we all watch and that everybody is familiar with. We really immersed our delegates into a concept that they weren't expecting and that they weren't used to. They were the sort of people that had year on year had that typical SlideShare facts and figures, and so this was completely format breaking, completely different, and we got the whole inspiration from just something as simple as TV. Another example is this event, which has been put on by Xero. Some of you might be familiar with the company Xero, the accountancy software. There's a few nodding heads. So they put on this event that was dubbed Coachella for Accountants. It had, there was over 3,000 attendees. This was actually in Brisbane, this particular example. They had a wellness sphere. They had 5 different stages designed around the pillars of the business. As you can see, loads of really fun interactive areas. The head of events at Xero said about her event that it provided delegates with a platform to connect, participate and learn in ways that were wholly unique to a typical accounting conference, which I think is a really nice quote, and it shows actually that our ideas don't have to be completely unique. They just have to feel different for your audience and different to what they might expect. So something like the concept of a festival that we just saw is not a new innovation by any stretch, but when you take that idea and you apply it to a conference for accountants, it suddenly feels really innovative and feels really different. So moving away from that, this is just another of my little tips that I think has worked really well for me in the past, of kind of changing up the format of some of the events that we've put on. So this is when you're not able to take the risk of creating something different, but you still want your audience to walk away feeling they were hosted at something that was not what they were expecting and a bit of a different experience. And that is my rule of, if in doubt, change one thing. So really simple, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples to kind of elaborate a bit further on what I mean by this. This here was an event I produced in the past for a finance, pensions and investments company. Essentially, it was a conference. So as you can see, we had no chairs. Other than that, the event itself remained pretty much as you would expect. The delegates received their invitation to their financial conference. They were all the sort of normal steps, and everything else was sort of the same as normal. Really, there was no kind of dramatic theme. But when you got there, there were actually no chairs. Obviously, we had to change the content delivery around in terms of the presentations from the stage were sort of short, sharp bursts. Then we had sort of smaller, open plan kind of breakout interactions sort of around the space. But otherwise, everything else was kind of the same, and all we did was really change the way people were actually interacting in the space, and it made such a difference. There was amazing feedback from this in a world where typically they were used to the same thing time and time again, and it doesn't cost the earth to make a change like that. Another sort of similar example is this particular event was an industry networking promotional event. So people got their invitations to come to this showcase. There was a 3-course meal, there was speeches, there was a bit of entertainment, all the things that you'd expect. But people talked about this for months and months and months, because all we did was just change the layout from the round tables that they had come to expect. And we had these 2 really long tables going through the middle of this vast open space. This is at Battersea Evolution, for any of you that might be familiar with that venue. And it just felt like something completely different. But like I said, all we did was change the table layout. And I quite like this rule because it's a good way that you can apply it, particularly for those of you who said that you're having trouble getting things signed off internally. You're not having to come up with these wow factor concepts that then just might hit a brick wall. It's just about changing one thing, but it can give people a really different experience. And you can do this with catering. Change up the menu style. You could do it with the speaker. Come up with a speaker that's totally off topic and not what people would expect. And just pick one thing and focus on changing that one thing, and that could actually really break the mold with your event and create a really different experience. My final tip is about collaboration, which for me is a really, really crucial ingredient for coming up with ideas. And I'm talking about collaborating with your external suppliers, collaborating maybe with your clients is really important, collaborating internally with colleagues. That might be colleagues in your immediate events teams, or it might also be colleagues outside of your team who come in with a completely different perspective on things and can actually make you think differently. So for me, many heads are better than one, and collaboration is a really, really important ingredient for how some of the best ideas are formed when it comes to live events, which is, funnily enough, what we're going to do right now. So we're going to move on to the workshop section.